Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee Break. I'm Faith Jacobs, and joining me today is the lovely and talented Elliott Wooster. Thank you, Elliott, so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, if you could start us off by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do, we can then, following that, dive right into my questions.
Lovely. So my name is Elliott Wooster. I am a non-binary musical theatre performer and actor. I've also done some TV and film work as well. But I predominantly work in new musical theatre and um, developing concept albums with people and trying to. I don't know. I enjoy doing a lot more new musical theatre and works where the paint's still wet and you can still work with it and it's malleable. So I've done a number of collaborations with an amazing writer called Charlie Eglinton. I've done a lot of work with a Manchester-based musical theatre duo that try and push the boundaries of storytelling called Leo and Hyde. They are amazing as well. If you check them out they've got a couple of things out on Spotify and on any streaming services. But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
That's really cool. Before we dive into discussing some of the projects you've been a part of course, a wonderful shout out to Charlie. She's amazing. You you've been a part of like I said, some beautiful projects. Maybe take us back to how you fell into this world of stage acting and musical theater. What was it that led you to pursue the world of acting?
I think one of my first earliest memories was the the musical Cats, which
Oh,
uh, which had a very questionable movie come out in the last couple of years, which some believe is the beginning of the end of human civilization. But I remember when I was a kid watching. We had a VHS cassette of the stage show, like a pro shot of the stage show, and I remember watching that like obsessively. And there's this thing where if you watch a part of a video cassette over and over, it kind of wears down and it becomes all crackly.
mhm.
My entire Cats VHS was that, so we ended up having to get a second copy of the Cats VHS. But yeah, I all I wanted to do my entire life then was become a Jellicle Cat. Not a performer. I wanted to be a Jellicle Cat. Um, but my parents then took me to see the show on stage. I think it was at the New London at that point. So I went to see that and realized, oh gosh, this is like a job that people do. This is something that this is something that I could be more than a Jellicle Cat. I could be a Jellicle Cat, but I could be many other things as well. And then that kind of started a whole line of events that led to now, I guess. But then I sort of started doing amateur dramatics. I think my first ever show that I was part of was Carousel, and I was one of the kids in that. And then we did Oliver after that, which was obviously had a lot more involvement for kids. And then yeah, just high school shows, and eventually moved to London to start training. I did a year at the London College of Music, which was an amazing time, and was went there always with the intention of reapplying to go to another school. But ended up going to Central School of Speech and Drama and did my 3 years of studying there, and then yeah, that kind of got me to where I am now.
That's really cool. That must have been quite the. You ever afraid whenever you got on that stage for the first time, or was it like the most exhilarating thing you've ever had?
To be honest, I get quite bad stage fright. I think the thing that's changed it for me now, it's only really been this last show that I've done that's really kind of gotten me through the stage fright. I think because I quite often have only ever really done short stints of things or done things that have been pre-recorded or things like that where you have that leeway of if something goes wrong, nah. Um, so the show I'm currently working on, I'm currently working on Stranger Things, which is a touring show, musical parody of Stranger Things. But doing that for the last, I think by the time I finish, it'll be about 8-9 months I've been doing
Oh,
it for. It's kind of really gotten me through it because I've experienced every single possible thing that can go wrong. I think. I hope. I
oh
hope. Touch wood.
no! Oh no!
Please don't tell me there's more. But I've experienced so many things that have gone wrong and so many things that I just kind of have lost the fear now. But I it's only really been then that I've lost it. Before that, I think every time I went on stage, there'd be a little bit of fear.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
but I think a little bit of fear is good as well. I think it keeps you on your toes. It stops you being complacent.
Right. It does keep you humble. I understand that. I had to audition quite recently for my very first chance to go at an on camera role, and boy, the nerves that I had. Even if it's just you, it's like it's still a camera looking at me in the face. Um, you have quite the powerful vocal range, and I would say your covers are really amazing. You really do take center stage, and there I would say a little nostalgic in some ways with your vocal range. And I can't wait to get to our question about saving Mozart because stellar vocals on that. But my question on that is, what's your process for breaking down characters behind like songs in order to bring like a different flavor and a different rhythm to all the characters you've sung for?
um, I think I would kind of say that I have a bit of a distinctive voice. I think when I sing, often listen to myself back, and I think I don't think I have the best voice on the planet, and I don't ever claim to have the best voice on the planet because there will always be somebody who is better, like in whatever way, or like in some objective way is better. But I do quite like my voice, and I like the fact that it's a bit distinctive anyway. Um, I have, I think, gotten by on that a little bit and become a bit complacent with like vocal health. So that's become something that I'm now trying to do a bit more as I'm getting older. I'm finding that things are getting more difficult to be as free with my voice without consequence. Like now I have to definitely think about it more and think about how I'm placing my voice. But I think having an understanding of how to manipulate your voice and change it to convey different characters or to do different things, or to know that moving one bit of musculature in your voice can make you sound younger or make you sound older or make you sound more sinister. So I think that kind of thing, and understanding that kind of thing, which was kind of a bit of my like nerdy area when I was in training. It's something that I've always thought if I were to do an MA or if I were to do any kind of follow up education, I think I would probably do it in vocal studies because it does just really I find that really interesting.
I've always heard it said because I do things with voice actors. I work with voice actors quite a bit, and it's all about like they say pitch, volume,
Mm.
and tone. I think is the sort of the three main things, and that you'll hear a lot of voice actors talking about when they're speaking on performance.
Mm.
So I do think it's interesting that you bring that up. How maybe the maybe even having just an understanding of like vocal range as far as singing goes could even influence you to maybe pursue that.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think as well, part of it, in a weird way, I've been kind of lucky to have worked so much in doing concept albums and especially doing things remotely, because all you have is your voice. Then it's not you're having to portray character entirely through your voice rather than doing anything else. And I think a lot of the time when you're working in musical theatre, you're auditioning in front of a panel or you're on a stage or you're doing this, that, and the other with other people there. And so you have many other things you can do. You've got your body language and you've got all these other tools to work with. But then when you strip it back to just your voice, so I think it's been really kind of a bit of a gift to be able to do that,
yeah.
and has completely changed my approach to how I view my voice.
So, outside of musical theater, what other kinds of projects are you drawn to genre-wise? This could be film, it could be television, audio drama, video games. Like, are you drawn to sort of like step into, I guess I mean?
I do want to try everything. I'm one of those people who, well, I especially when I came into the industry, I very much only wanted to do musical theatre, and that was I had these blinkers on where I was just like, I want to be a musical theatre performer, and I want to be on the West End, and I want to be on Broadway, and I want to this, that, and the other. But I very quickly realized that I don't need any of that. Like, as in, I would obviously jump at the chance to do anything West End or anything that has that kind of prestige, but at the same time, I realized how focusing on that really does shut out any other opportunity where you might find something really wonderful. And I remember doing um, my first filming project, and that was a very strange one. That was it was a Bollywood movie that I did, and I only had a couple of lines in it. But I even just doing that, I was like, this is such a different experience and such a different skill set that I don't really know if I have or not. So when I got the opportunity to do a movie that I did called Survive, I just fell in love with it, and I realized I'm shutting out so much by having this one track mind. But I definitely would love to do video games. I've auditioned for a few. Haven't had any success with them yet, but I would love to do one, especially ones where it's like they do the motion capture and face capture ones now,
Yes.
where it's you are literally in it. I would love to do something like that, and I'm a big fan of horror. Like horror is my little area that I would love to. I mean, if I could work entirely in horror, I would give up everything else. So yeah, I think definitely video games would be great, and definitely anything. As I say, I would do horror
Yeah,
until the
I'm
cows come
a
home.
I know that there is a motion capture performance art school out in London, if I'm not mistaken. I think, oh gosh, what is his name? Uh, are you familiar with Detroit Become Human?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So there is an actor who plays a character named Gavin. I'm forgetting his actor's name. It's Neil something, but Neil teaches performance capture out in London, which
Hmm.
is still the coolest thing to me. Switching gears a little bit to television, you were in the spin-off show for BBC called Rebel Cheer Squad. I've seen the show. I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Particularly liked like the one line. I think it was more energy. You all look like a bunch of depressed pandas. I want that on a shirt. Um, can you tell me what it was like to audition for the project, and what was the process of filming for an established television series like? By the way, love the costume in Sam's specific episode. I want that outfit.
Well, yeah, no, I really wanted that as well. There was the pink jacket, and then there was also I don't really think you ever got to see it on camera much, but I had these like blue wedge high heeled Converse,
You
and
did. I want those
I was
Converse.
like, is there any? Also, they were like 3 sizes too small for me. I had to basically unzip
Oh
them because they found these shoes and they were like, oh god, they're perfect, but they're not your size. And I was like, well, we could wear them anyway because I was like, they are kind of perfect. So I basically would wear other shoes to walk to where I was going, and then have to like zip them up right before we shot, and then go and do it because they were like 2 3 sizes too small for me. Um,
no! Oh no!
I did still want to steal them, but I'm not very brave when it comes to stuff like that. I know there's like actors that steal all the time, but yeah, I'm a bit of a goody two shoes in that sense. But yeah, it was we auditioned during COVID for that, so I did it through a self tape,
Okay.
and I was taping so I had to do a self tape that was the like dialogue. Um, I think actually it was a scene. It was a scene that made it to the show, but it was very very different. It had been slightly extended, but I did a tape for that, and then I also had to do a cheerleading self tape, which in a small London flat during COVID was interesting. I had to rearrange all of my furniture and stack it, so that I had a little bit of room to do the thing. But I thought it was very very much not. I thought they were going to go much younger. I thought they were going to go much more attractive, and so I basically was auditioning for it, thinking it's never going to happen. And I, at the same time, was auditioning for a play, which I was like, oh, this is perfect for me. This is exactly who I think I am, and had really high hopes for it. And I got a phone call from my agent saying you didn't get the play, and I was like, oh, okay, that's fine, that's fine. And then later that day, I got a phone call from my agent. I was like, oh, this is going to be them calling to say I haven't got the TV show either. But they called me and they were like, right, so don't get your hopes up, but you're their pick for the role. And I was like, oh, okay, what does that mean? And obviously, I think in the States it's much more involved, but it is still a thing over here of like you kind of pitch to the network kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you can have the casting director's choice, but then it has to go through a bunch of sort of people higher up who a lot of the time don't work in casting or work in it. They're sort of the legal minds and the money minds and stuff like that. So it goes through to them, and then it has to come back down the chain to okay it. So this was on a Friday, and I was like, well, I'm not going to hear back until Monday now. So I was like, oh, just going to have a whole weekend of me thinking, do I have this job or do I not have this job? But then they called me back in like 10 minutes and they were like, oh yeah, no, they've all said yes. So you've got the job. And I was like, just mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. But this was, as I say, during COVID. So I I got really sick right before we were set
Oh
to go and
no.
film. And I was like, I don't, I, we had plenty of time. So I was like, I know that I'll be fine by the time I'll be outside of any kind of windows or whatever of infection. And if anything, I'll probably be the safest person on set because I'll have just had COVID. Um, but I was like, I can't, if I tell them, I'm worried that they will fire me.
Oh no.
So we had a virtual table read over Zoom, and I was so ill that I was just sweating buckets. So I got my big studio light and put it behind the camera, so I was very well lit. I put a full face of makeup on, and I had two industrial fans blowing on me that were remote controlled. So anytime my line would come up, I'd turn off the fans, I'd turn myself off Zoom, I'd say my line, and then I would turn the fans back on. So I looked probably the best I've ever looked in my entire life. I looked amazing, but I was very ill. Yeah.
Oh no.
But yeah, no, it was a really fun process as well. I mean, we had to do cheerleading practice, which is something like we every week we would go to like a cheerleading class.
Oh, oh,
Um, which because I've never cheerled before,
no.
and so it was like a skill that we had to like entirely learn. And they were really
Looked
great
very
for teaching
physical.
us.
It looked very physical.
Yes, it was. And this is the
I was
thing as
like,
well.
wow.
We were working with. I think the age span for all of us who were sort of the principal cast. I think we were. Some of us were like 19, 20. Some of us were. I think I was 25 when we did it. Um, and but all the people that were from the cheerleading group. So the most of the supporting actors were from this cheerleading like after school club kind of thing.
Okay.
But they were all like between 13 and 17. And I was like, gosh, you're doing flips. And they'd come out these giant flips. They'd launch themselves like 20 feet in the air and land it. And then they'd like just walk away like, yeah, okay, yeah, I did that. I'm like, what? You just flew. Like, how is that? How is that not the most exciting part of your day?
Yeah, yeah. I have motor coordination issues, so that's incredible to watch somebody do that. I would probably fall and break something. um, so you mentioned earlier that you were part of course, are still part of Stranger Things.
Yes.
Um, so how did that opportunity happen? And you mentioned it helping with your stage fright, but like I'll frame it this way. Like what has been probably the most rewarding part of being a part of something that's so unique?
Um, so I auditioned for it because it came up through a sort of casting website that we have. I don't know if we have. I don't know if it's the same thing in the US, but it's. I know there are multiple casting websites, but yeah. So I applied for it through my agent and got an audition. Had really wonderful audition with was very nervous because I hadn't sung for an audition in about a year because I'd done other projects that had been either cast through people knowing me or cast through acting, having them already knew that I could sing. So I'd never sung I'd never sung an audition for about a year. So I was very nervous, but it was a really wonderful room. Like the entire casting team were just so lovely and made me feel very chill. So that was the start of the experience, which was very positive. Um, I think I forget what the how you phrase the question. Sorry, what was the most rewarding? Did you say?
Yeah, yeah. Like what has been like the most like rewarding like part of like being sort of involved with something that's so unique?
It really has changed how I approach things, definitely, because I think when you see something that's a parody or you see something that is kind of poking fun at source material, it did kind of ring alarm bells of like it being less than other projects that I would have done. and I realized that it A is not because it involves as much, if not more, energy and more um, focus and all this, that, and the other, but also because you have to approach it from love and you have to approach it from liking what you do. And I'm having so much fun doing it. It is honestly, I think, some of the best on stage time I've had, both through what I think I'm giving in the performance. I think it's a lot of the time I'm on stage doing something I'm truly, truly proud of. But also just having the most fun and realizing this is why I do it. Like, I do it because I do get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Um, and the character I'm playing as well, I'm playing. I don't know if you know Stranger Things at all,
Yeah.
but I'm playing Mike, and Mike isn't the character that everyone's going to see, right?
Right. Right.
They're going to see Dustin. They're going to see
Right.
Steve. So it was one of those things of kind of having to lose the ego a little bit, of knowing like, cool, you're going to see something that is a well-known IP, and people are going to see specific characters. So what can I do to support that whilst still being proud of the work I'm doing, whilst still you know, coming at it from a place of love and not a place of ego or anything like that. So I think it really has changed how I approach things.
That's good, and it looks fun. I saw a couple of the previews on YouTube and on the social medias. It looks like quite a fun show. Um, do you have a dream role or a project that you have yet to be a part of? Is there something that you're hoping to leap at that's established already or will be established? Or maybe there's even something you hope to write in and star yourself.
Um, I think in terms of like pre-established work, there's not a ton that I really see for myself. I think partly I struggle to cast myself in things mentally because I I'm trying to learn not to get into a casting director's head too much, if that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to sort of teach myself to, if I get called into an audition, assume that it's possible that I could get it and it's possible that I could not. So I kind of I wait until I'm in the room before I start thinking about, like, would I be suitable for this? Um, because I might surprise myself and get into a room that I didn't think I'd be welcome in. I think that's something as a non-binary actor where you never really know, are they going to consider me for this? Are they going to consider me? So I think I don't necessarily think in that way a lot.
You don't want
Um,
to pigeonhole yourself necessarily?
a little bit, yeah, and also I don't want to limit myself either. I don't want to think, oh, that I would never get seen for this character in this show, and then, because maybe I will one day. But I definitely would say that I would love to be involved with Mozart going forward in any capacity, whether that's um, still as Mozart or just, in any capacity. But there's also two projects that I've done with Charlie before that I would absolutely kill to do on a bigger scale, or to do a full production of. One of them being a musical called Eight that we did. It was the first show I did with her, actually. Um, it's a steampunk opera about this mafia family, and one of the sons goes away and creates an army of automatons, and it's a really, really fun, amazing show. I think there's a few songs on Spotify and on streaming services that you can check out, that are out now. We did do a full album years ago, but I think it's changed so much since then that I think it's been removed now. And the other
That
one is Fallen, which is about Robert Hooke, the scientist, or I don't know if that's the correct word to use, but who's a contemporary of Isaac Newton.
Oh,
That was a really, really good one.
that's really cool. So you mentioned two films. Well, one, I think you mentioned Survive, but you were also part of a what? If I'm, I couldn't watch it. I tried to. I think the service it was on did not allow me to watch it. War Hunt, I think it was.
Yes.
What can you tell me about these projects, War Hunt and Survive? What was the audition process like, and do you prefer film work to stage work after working on set, or are they both fulfilling to you?
So Survive was the first one that I worked on, which I saw the role come up and I thought, I could really do this. I could do this really well. And I don't know if I'd be what they're looking for, but I really think I could bring something to it. So I bypassed my agent and emailed the casting director directly and just was like, here's my tape. Can you please consider me for this role? Um, and they got back to us and they were like, they back through my agent, they sent a follow up saying, we'd love to meet you in person. We'll be meeting with this director. And I was looking online. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a like a Hollywood director. Like this is someone from LA. Like what? Um, so they invited me to an in person meeting in London, and I got there, and it was the casting director, a chair, and a camera, and I was like, oh, what?
Oh
And it
no.
turned out that I was doing the meeting via satellite. So like I was in
Ooh.
person with the casting director, but the director and the LA team were all still in LA, but it was all in real time. So it was kind of like meeting them properly, but just through space.
Nice.
And had a really, really great time with that. The writer came to the room and apparently he'd seen my tape, and the writer was like, honestly, that's kind of exactly how I'd written the role. Like that person there gets it. So I found that out later that I was his first choice. I don't know if it was anyone else's, but I got the job, so I don't care. Um, but
That's
then
all.
it was one of these things. I remember when I got the email saying that I got the job, it said, "Oh, we're hoping that Sophie Turner will have the lead role," and I was like, "Okay, you're hoping, but like I'm going to get there, and it's going to be like Jane from down the street." Um, but then I get there, and I get off the plane at like silly billy o'clock in the morning, and get taken to the hotel, and they're like, "Right, okay, so we're gonna do a quick table read in the director's hotel room, like the whole cast, and then we'll all go off to you'll go off to wardrobe, and then you can go to bed and have a bit of a nap." So I get there off the plane, and then Sophie Turner's just sat there in the hallway waiting to be let in, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is very weird. This is very okay." But it's one of those things where it was such a whirlwind, and I was so out of my depth that there was like no time to be scared or
You're
worried. I was just like, "Great, well, this
process.
is happening, isn't it?"
Oh man.
But it and then the next thing you know, we're doing a table read with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's like the former CFO CEO of Disney,
Oh
and I was
wow.
like, what? And it's just these crazy things just happening one after the other, and then you look back on it, and I barely remember the time now because I think I was it was so fast and I was so involved in it that you look back on it, you don't really remember too much about it. But I do remember having the most fun on set and finding it so difficult because it was such a heavy piece that we were doing. It was I was playing like a suicidal teenager who was in a sort of facility for at-risk youths, and kind of being in that headspace all day every day for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks when we were filming for was a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but was
Imagine.
really, really amazing and really rewarding. Like as an actor, and yeah, I kind of walked away from it thinking that it was just so much fun. I want to do more of it. And War Hunt actually was the same casting director, and she contacted me saying, "We're doing this other project. I think you'd be great for it. Would you like me to?" She's like, "I'll send you the material for you to do a tape for it." But she's like, "I'll kind of, I want to try and keep you in the mix because they liked working with me, so that was good. It's better than them not liking working with me. So yay." Um,
That's incredible. I feel you have such a bright and wonderful spirit, and it really shines through. I'm curious, as we all know, and I think as you've mentioned that like the acting world really has its ups and its downs, and very much its in betweens. What is an encouraging mantra that you use to keep yourself motivated during dry spells or times when you maybe don't book a role?
I wouldn't say that I have a mantra per se, but I think finding a balance between being humbled and like backing yourself, like having remembering what you've done that's amazing, finding that balance is kind of key, I would say. Because I thought when Survive happened, I was working with Sophie Turner at the time, who was in X-Men Dark Phoenix and the final season of Game of Thrones. It was during that time. So I was like, she's one of the biggest people in the world right now. So I kind of was doing this movie thinking, I am going to be so famous next week. Like, this is going to be completely life changing. And it was. And I had a lot of great things come from it. And I'm still continuing to work, and that's great. But I thought I was going to be like, you know, the next big thing as a result of it. And when I wasn't, it was very difficult to not take it very personally, and going on to different projects with people now who have the same mindset. And I'm like, just just make sure you're kind of enjoying the moment, not enjoying the thought of what might come from this moment. Because if you don't get that, then you've not enjoyed the moment and you've not gotten what you wanted from it. But at the same time, I remember talking to someone who wasn't in the industry, and they were asking about what I did, and I was like, oh, I did this project, and and because of how I'd responded to it, thinking like, well, it didn't get me 8 million followers on Instagram, it didn't launch my career into this stratosphere of famousness. um I kind of was looking back on it a little bit bitter, and I was talking to someone about it, and they're like, oh my god, that's amazing, that's so good. And I was like, do you know what it is? And I don't think of it as being amazing, but then I look back and I'm like, I need to look at it like it was, because it was. So I think, yeah. So I'd say finding that balance between being humble and enjoying it for what it is, but also not being afraid to back it and be like, this was a great thing that I've done, and I am a great person. I have done great things, and finding that balance.
No, I feel that entirely. There are times where I look at my own credits and go, there are 4 credits to your name, Faith, and it's nothing significant. And yet, then you also have to say to yourself, humble thyself, you 4 credits to your name. Um, and you were very lucky that someone let you in on their passion project.
Mm,
You know,
definitely.
what would you say was the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself by stepping into your authentic voice as an artist in pursuit of the world of acting?
I would say that the the world of acting gets a lot easier once you know what you sell, which is something that I feel like I was told a bunch at drama school, and kind of was like, yeah, but I also, you want to do everything and be everything. But there is definitely an element of knowing what you sell and selling it well is more valuable than anything else. And that's something that you first have to know what you sell, which you almost never do at drama school, or when you're young or you're in training. I think you often think you do, but it's only once you start realizing, cool, so this is what I can do with my voice, and this is what I can do that no one else can do, or this is what I can do and I know I can do better than 70-80% of people. So I think the other thing for me was, as someone who is non-binary and has been kind of figuring that out over a long period of time, I realized that there's a lot of myself that I was withholding, and a lot of myself that I was kind of shy about or embarrassed to show. I felt like, because of the way that the industry likes to box people and likes to know, what is it that you do? You're a male who does this, or you are a female who does this. So kind of anything that put me outside of either of those boxes made me feel like I was going to be losing out on things. But it meant that I was forcing myself into these boxes in ways that meant I wasn't able to show. Like, during War Hunt, for example, it was a very I was playing a military person, and I felt so uncomfortable and um so un- uh, I wasn't able to do my best work because I was second guessing every action I did, because I was like, oh, I don't want to be perceived too camp or too female or too whatever, because I know that I don't identify as male, but I'm playing this male role. Whereas now, if I did it, because I understand myself a lot more and I'm able to see uh less binary with it, that I definitely would do a much better job now, because I know what I sell, and I can use that in different ways to play different roles. But I now know what I can do and what I'm comfortable with, and how to make myself comfortable within those things. So I think, yeah, I'd say knowing what you sell and knowing how to sell it is definitely the best thing I've learned.
No, that's a good point too. It's almost like it's like there's this big push right now in the disability world of acting, where I sort of fall into the into the field of the creative sphere, and it's like we want more authenticity, and you're having a bunch of autistic actors have to sort of unmask a lot of their own traits that they have suppressed in order to, fit into, like you said, those boxes
Mm.
you just sometimes don't fit into. And it's a very fascinating thing to sort of witness in, I think, all facets of the industry.
Well, and the thing is as well, it's there's the biggest lessons that I've learned, but I think the other thing is, whilst I'm growing, the world and the industry also is as well, and that's I definitely am seeing a lot more push for people who are gender diverse, neurodiverse, people with disability, um, having more people write their own stories rather than having stories be written for them. There seems to be, it's not, obviously it's nowhere near enough, but
No,
there does seem to be more of a push for that, and that also I think helps in terms of stepping into your authentic voice.
absolutely.
Because you are stepping into a voice that is authentic, even if it's not yours directly, but it is a voice that you represent.
That's true. That's very true. That's a good point. I'm curious, since of course you mentioned you do a lot with musical theater, would you ever step into a recording booth and record an album of like original or cover songs? We're going to get to a question about one of your musical concepts in a minute here, and of course, Stranger Things. But do you ever hope to record an album of your own?
I definitely would. Yeah, I would love to at some point. I think I've done a number of covers with my brother that we did for Mother's Day and Father's Day, because my we we have these specific songs that my parents really really like, and we thought one year we were like, oh, for Mother's Day we'll do the song that my mum really likes, and for Father's Day we'll do a cover of the song my dad really likes. Um, and we I think our voices work really well together. We have very very similar voices, and we've been on a lot of Charlie's albums together, which is great. So it's great to get to perform with him. So I definitely have to do more songs with him, and definitely do some more covers of things. But I do write some of my own stuff as well, which I'm not quite at the phase where I'm comfortable sharing it. But I think that, but I think down the line that definitely I'd love to share some of that stuff, because some of it I really really enjoy, and it's very indicative of parts of my life, like of eras of my life, and some of the stuff I've written, I look back on now, and it's actually a bit difficult to look at, because I think, gosh, is that really how I viewed myself, or is that really how I was feeling at that time? Um, because in hindsight, I'm like, oh no, I don't really feel like that anymore. But yeah, I do still think I think there's something there. I think it's quite good. I don't know,
Well,
and I
yeah,
won't know unless I share it. But we'll get to that when we
maybe
get to it.
baby steps, little stepping stones here and there. Eventually you'll get to that place. I know that fear quite well.
Mhm.
I do want to touch very briefly on saving Mozart, however much you want to get in depth of it, or not. Like share whatever you feel you can. But I would love to know how you did get involved with it and with Charlie, what your thought process was behind your characterization of Wolfgang, because so many different people have portrayed him in different ways on stage, in books, and film. And I'm curious, how did you, given the material you were working with, decide to portray your take on him?
Yeah. So I think, well, so to start with, my connection with Charlie, that came from like a very very kismet situation where I was with my old agent, and my brother had uh he'd he'd not been dropped by his agency closed. That was it. His agency closed, and so he needed new representation. And I said, look, just email my agent, see if they will, even just on a short term basis, if they'll represent you, just to keep you afloat and keep you getting in the room until you find something else. Um, so he emailed my agent, and they were like, we would love to represent you, and also we've had this audition come up for something, for a concept album. We think you'd be great for it. We'd love to submit you. And so he heard the music and was like, this is I've never heard music like this. This is just absolutely amazing new writing. So he jumped at the opportunity, got the job, and then Charlie, who had written this song, was like, great, we just need to find someone to play this character's brother now. And my agent was like, well, we actually represent his brother. So, you know, is there anything there? So she asked for me to tape for the brother, and I got the job. And lo and behold, me and my brother got to play brothers for the first time, and had this amazing concept album that we worked on together with Charlie. And we've kind of worked with her on most of her projects since, in some capacity, even if it's just sort of doing ensemble vocals and stuff like that. Um, so we've worked with her on, I think we've done about 8 or 9 different things. I think when I look at how many songs I've done with her, um, whether that be for projects where we've done a couple of them a couple of times, I think I've done almost like 150 songs with Charlie.
How
It's quite a lot. She's quite prolific.
really good.
But if she keeps writing, I'll keep singing. But the so yeah, so that's how I got involved with Charlie, and I've worked with her ever since. Um, and we did Mozart, I think 2-3 years ago now. Um, but it also got to cross off one of my bucket list things. We did there's a thing in London called the London Musical Theatre Orchestra, and they do this thing called the Sitz Probe, where they get together and they put together a musical in a day,
Oh wow.
with a full orchestra, and they'll usually get sort of West End people to come in and sing the leads, and you can go and sing. So you just learn. So they've done Wicked, I think, in the past. They've done,
Oh
can't remember what
wow.
else they've done, but they did one that was all about new musical theatre writing. So instead of it being a full show, they put together different writers, and they got to have their song performed by a choir of like 100 people and an
Wow.
orchestra, like a full orchestra. And so we did a new song from Mozart that Charlie had written, like a new finale number that Charlie had written for it. And I got to sing with this big choir and this big orchestra behind me. And I was like, this is just such a dream come true moment.
Oh,
But, but yeah, in terms of my approach to Mozart, I think with it being a concept album, the important thing is very much the music, because it's Charlie's tool really to kind of sell the show to other people, to producers and whoever. So I kind of, the music had to be the forefront of it, and we weren't at that time as well. We weren't really sure what we wanted to do with it. So I did it Americanized and quite young sounding, even though it was quite old
right.
character wise.
He's
Not quite old, but like
he's about 25, I think, if I have the date correct, that
yeah.
that Charlie is writing about, because I too am currently writing my own take on his story.
Hmm.
But I think you, for the age, you played it really well, I can
Well,
say.
thank you.
You were you honestly, I think, there are two songs that, like, you had, like, your vocals really stick out to me for that, and it would be "I Can't Wait to Meet You," and "Because of You." You had me in tears with "I Can't Wait to."
Oh,
I did. I bawled. It doesn't it, like, it is the sweetest song, and I can't wait to and "Because of You" is just like powerful.
yeah, yeah. And also, I think was the first time I got to sing directly with Charlie, because Charlie voiced young
Young,
Wolfie. um, and so yeah, it was the first time I've gotten to sing with Charlie, and that was really really nice. And after having worked with her for a number of years, but yeah, and because I think I think now I don't know what the current consensus is with the show, but when I did the new finale number, it was with a British accent. Um,
okay.
but I think the Americanized came from the fact that it is sort of American influenced music, that
Right.
it's fused with, that the Mozart motifs are fused with. So I think that was one avenue that we were looking at early on. But yeah, I'm very interested to see where it goes and how it develops. But it's just such a wonderful show musically, and it's just a bit of an Easter egg hunt for any Mozart fans. It's so I was I obviously knew of Mozart, and I know there's some really great plays depicting his life. Um, but Charlie, when I got sent the initial material for it, had sent me a list of what all of the songs were inspired by, like the Mozart songs that they're inspired by. And I was like, gosh, this is so clever how these songs have been used, or like how, because some of them are quite deep cuts.
Yeah.
And I just, it baffles me. And the way her mind works is just incredible. Every show that I've done with her has been a fully fleshed out different idea. Like she's done a J-rock musical. She's done like that's about spirit wolves and um this kind of thing. She's done a steampunk opera. We've done a math rock musical about Robert Hooke. We've done an Irish mythology musical with her. She's just done some incredible stuff.
Yeah, and you like everyone in that cast, and I think even one of them was currently on like the UK's like tour of Moulin Rouge. Like all of them
Mm.
were incredible. It's first of it's a beautiful album. I feel like you were the perfect choice for Mozart. You captured his heart in a way that I've not even seen La Opera Mozart Rock capture, and I love La Opera Mozart Rock. But like you guys have done something very special here, and I really do hope whatever its current status, it gets seen because it deserves to be seen. You
Yeah,
guys,
I would very, very much definitely agree. And that's the thing. Even without myself as part of it, I just want it to get its flowers because it is such a wonderful show.
it really is. So outside of Mozart, are there any other individuals, either real or fictional, who you dream of having the chance to step into the shoes of, either on film, on stage, or otherwise? If so, who is this person and why that one in particular?
I weirdly have done a fair few historical figure things.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I don't know if it's so I've done, obviously I've worked now doing Mozart. Um, we also did with Robert Hooke musical. I was Isaac Newton in that, and that was really, really fun. I learned a lot about him doing that. I then also have have done some of the uh, demo work for a musical called Galileo, which is really, really
Oh,
amazing, and that's got some traction at the moment. I think they're doing a lot of work on that. Um, I did the very, very early stages, so it's kind of moved on for me now. But it is still just such a wonderful show and very, very exciting things. And I really loved doing the sort of scientific historical figures that, and I think because you learn so much doing them, because I don't know, there's so much interesting like bitchy gossiping in the scientific community, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was so catty. But I would also love to do. I'd love to do more work with queer historical figures as well. Um, I mean, I feel like the obvious ones would sort of be like Oscar Wilde and Alan Turing and stuff like that. And I know that they
oh
have been done
yeah.
or are being done at the moment as well. I know there's an Alan Turing musical that's been in development over the last couple of years.
Oh,
Um,
that would be amazing. I
yeah,
read his papers and he was just a brilliant man.
yeah. I mean, I went to Bletchley Park recently, which is where the code cracking was done and stuff like that. And it's just a really quite. I got quite emotional about it. Like
Oh,
it was just such a weird thing because it's also so weird having this place that glorifies him so much. And I'm like,
mhm.
but what did we do to him? You
He was
know,
so poorly. Like, yeah, it really. Have you seen Imitation Game as well?
I do you know what, I haven't, and I feel awful because I haven't. But no, I definitely need to watch that. But yeah, I think it's such an interesting story, such a heartbreaking story, but it's very much one that I would love to work on at some point.
Oscar Wilde would be fascinating to see, like a stage play about. I mean, if
Hmm.
it isn't already, that would be really cool.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
Um, let's hop around back to your recurring role in Rebel Cheer Squad if you can. That role to me looked like it was a lot of fun, but what part of portraying Sam did you enjoy the most, and how did you help, if at all, to contribute to the character's creation outside of your role as an actor? I don't know how involved. I know some productions are very like, this is the character, this is how we
Hmm.
want. But were you given any freedom to contribute at all?
Um, little bits. I think in terms of w- nothing so much as like changing script or anything like that. Although I will say it's weird you saying about the depressed pandas line earlier on, because when we did the table read, it got a really, really big laugh, and and apparently someone from the writing team had told me that apparently there was pushback from Netflix to add more based on that line delivery. So that is one way I believe I may have contributed. But yeah, it's my first time playing a non-binary character, which was really, really fun and really nice and cathartic after having done War Hunt, where I was so in my head at the time. it was nice to have the payoff of, well, this is kind of me getting to explore it a bit more and explore who I am. And I feel like I learned a lot about myself from it. It also was like a nice sort of resource to be able to have when talking to family members about my gender expression and being like, well, this is kind of a little bit what it is. So it was nice to have almost to kind of have my coming out be a TV show. I
Right,
mean, there are worse ways to come out. But
right.
but I think myself and Aisling O'Shea, who plays Rumi in that in Rebel Cheer Squad, we kept on having these conversations where we were like, "Gosh, it's so weird, kind of being the representation we wished we'd had," because she was playing a brown queer woman, and she herself is a brown queer woman, and she was like, "It's crazy that I'm actually getting to do this, and to also have a storyline." Because this is one of the things that I think is a bit underappreciated in Rebel Cheer Squad is that you have two South Asian queer women whose love story is not about like their family not approving, or there's no conflict to their love that is about their queerness. The conflict to their love is
It's not a stereotype.
external.
It's not. It's like it's not. I think the beautiful thing about it is like it's not stereotyped.
Exactly, yeah. And so for both of them getting to do it, they they were really really enjoying the fact that they were getting to tell a story like this, because normally they would be telling a story of, oh, my parents don't approve, and so they were really really enjoying that, and I was enjoying getting to play a non-binary character who was kind of sure of who they were, because I think the bigger story, like the again, my character's story wasn't that they didn't know how to deal with their gender or anything like that. The story was that they knew who they were, but they weren't able to be themselves because the school wasn't letting them. And so it was nice to tell a story that wasn't about, I guess, queer trauma in the same way, like a queer character whose story is not about their internal trauma.
Right, and like, and I think stories like I would say Heartstopper is one of those that
Hmm.
tackles that. It's necessary and needed maybe for a majority of people who are a part of that community. But like it's like telling the same story of like the traumatized autistic family. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
And it's like you're sitting there and going, yeah, but that's not really. I'm just a person. Just look at me as a person. I think Bella Ramsey said that best. She goes, "I'm just." Bella was like, "I'm just a person," you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And because
And
he, sorry,
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, because the story, there is definitely a validity and a need for the trauma stories, or for these these more difficult to discuss topics still being told, because I think a lot of people, particularly when you talk about sort of trans representation and trans rights, a lot of the time people will go, will use them as conversation points of like a trans person they know, even though they're fictional. It's
Right.
like, oh, like that character in that show. And so you do still need those things to remind you that, like, oh, there is still horrible things that are happening to trans people, or there's still people with disabilities, or people with neurodivergence, and sorry, neurodiverse people who are experiencing horrible things, or are, this is what some people go through. But then it is also important to show the joy and
Yeah,
show people thriving and people living their lives well.
I agree.
Because there are also people who are within these different categories that are living well and are having a wonderful time.
Absolutely. It's like we say the word diverse means quite literally not. It's not a circle. It's a triangle. It's a big triangle of different possibilities, and we need all kinds of stories, not just I think the same thing over and over again.
Mm.
Now,
Particularly love stories. This is
yes,
the thing, like, why do we not show neurodiverse people falling in love as much? Why do we
right,
not show queer people falling in love as much? Right? I mean, obviously, there is more of a push and change, and I think definitely within the gay community, it's changed. I still think we don't really show enough trans dating,
no,
but
there definitely is. I feel like before. before everything, changes and shifts, there's always going to be that pushback, and I think that fear, which is sad on all sides, but
Hmm.
sometimes we have to leap if we're going to make any positive change. Um, it My following question: out of all the roles you've performed, which one challenged you the most as an actor in regard to your skills as a performer? How did it stretch you creatively? And what did you learn or take away from this experience that's helped you in any projects you've been a part of moving forward?
I think that's a good question because I think there's been different roles that I've done that have been difficult in different ways. I think definitely in terms of the timing and in terms of and kind of physically and doing War Hunt was definitely the most difficult job I've ever done. Both with me not being in a great place mental health wise, but still having to do the job. Um, had wonderful support from people around me. Honestly, that cast was so incredible. I think really they were the first kind of people I came out to that weren't my family. Because I'd had a night where they were sort of like, "Are you okay? Like, you don't really seem like you're okay at the moment." And I told them that I was like, "Well, I don't think I'm male, and I don't." At that time, I wasn't really sure where I was or how I was feeling about things. But they were really, it was this group of cis het um, quite masculine guys all sat around having this conversation with me, and it was that was very touching. But so I that was very difficult in that way. Plus, it was also very physically difficult because we started filming in the winter in the middle of a forest.
Oh
So
my.
it was incredibly cold. I had heat packs hidden in my costume so that I could
Oh,
try and keep a little bit warm. Um, And I actually, at one point, I got sort of like chemical burns on my stomach because I'd put too many of them on my stomach
oh
and they'd
no.
kind of leaked a little bit. But so it was really, really like freezing cold. But then we had a COVID shutdown and we came back to the project 6 months later, which was then height of summer. So
Oh, oh
we
no.
went from freezing cold to burning, scalding hot. And I was wearing
Oh,
all this like military stuff. So that was very physically taxing doing that. Um, so yeah, I'd say that's probably the most difficult one. But I think I don't know, I would say in terms of what has stretched me creatively and what I will take going forward, probably will be Mike from Stranger Things. Because I think it's definitely pushed my comedic side and made me realize how much I have to draw from comedically, both in terms of my what I have in myself and also what I've kind of absorbed through osmosis, watching so many comedy things and having so many great comedic inspiration points. So I think getting that freedom to do that has really helped, and I think I'll definitely take that forward with me.
absolutely. You mentioned this earlier. You said it was a Bollywood film, and I think it's called in English medium. You mentioned
Yes.
that I could not find that. And so was it like something that you dubbed, or was it actually were you physically present on set for this role?
I was physically present on set. It was my first ever filmed job, and it was a very weird one. I the audition was very simple. I just had to kind of talk to camera for like a minute and talk about my experience. Um, and they cast me from that. But it was yeah, it was a very weird one. And then I got to set and had no idea what I was doing.
Oh no.
And it was also because it was an Indian company that was also partnered with a British company. So that they had filmed all of this stuff in India that they needed to film, and then they brought over a team to the UK. But I mean, there's always lots of people on set. There were a lot of people on set for this. There was, and a lot of the time, I don't think many of them were needed. So it was quite, it was quite. You were filming in like a tiny room, and there was like 70 people in the room, and then a further like 40, 50 people outside the room. I was like, gosh, it's very feeling very watched right now. But it was a really fun experience. It was definitely it made me want to do more TV and film. I have no idea what the film is about. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah,
because it was all in Hindi. And
right,
so
right.
I knew what my lines were, and I'd asked on set actors what the context was, but they also, because I think it was a sequel to like a really, really popular movie, like a really quite big movie in India. So they had to keep a lot under wraps. So we weren't
Right.
ever told any of the story. And I've kind of Googled it now, like in after the fact, to kind of find out what it's about. And I still am a little bit confused. So I
Yes,
feel like I need to watch it with someone who understands Hindi, or if I can find an English dub of it.
I was as well because I it's not available obviously on my I think Amazon maybe Amazon Hindi might have it, but I do not have I can't get it here in the States. But I did watch the trailer. I was like, interesting.
Well,
Um,
the thing was, is I'd be on set and they'd be talking about what they were doing over the next couple of days, and they're like, okay, so we need the gold Rolls Royce on this day for the chase at the airport, and I was like, "Oh, what? What is this movie about? Um, and I remember as well that I the 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 casting the casting announcement called for someone who was gangly. And I was like, right, okay, I'm quite gangly. Like, I'm all limbs. Um, and I did my first take, and they were like, that was great. Could you maybe do it a bit more gangly? I was like, I don't know what you mean. Like, do you want me to drop stuff? Do you want me to like flail my arms? Like, I don't know what you mean. And they kept on giving me the same note. They were like, we just want a bit more gangly. And I was like, okay. And then I suddenly realized, I was like, they mean camp. They mean camp, but they're not saying camp. So I tried at camp and they were like, great, more of that. That's exactly what we want. I was like, right, okay. Now I know. Now we're talking the same language. So we're like upped it and upped it and upped it. And they were loving it on set. And they were like, oh gosh, this is great. This is great. And I don't know if it made it past like censorship or something, because the take they used was the first take.
oh
So
no.
they'd used the like very sort of straight laced, like direct take. But the other scenes I'd filmed after, where I'd kind of been like, okay, so no, the character's very camp, very whatever. And watching, I've seen my scenes, and I've seen a couple of other bits of it. But there's a bit where like she leaves some dishes in the sink, and I meant to sort of look at her and be like, like, what are you doing that for? So I did
Right,
that kind of cough. But
right.
the shot they've used, they've cropped my head out of it, so
Oh
you
no.
can't see my eyes doing the like kind of eyes, and they've dubbed the cough, so you just see my body turn and you just hear, and
Oh
I
no.
was like, what? I don't cough like that. I don't think I'm capable of coughing like that. Like, it's much deeper than the cough I just did then. So it was yeah, that was a fun experience.
Oh boy. I bet it would be a fun experience seeing yourself dubbed in a completely different language. Oh boy. I'm kind of curious. So we've talked about like motion capture and other facets of the acting world. Would you ever leap at doing an audiobook?
I think I would. I think because it's a very, very difficult job. I reckon
Yeah.
I did some audiobook work when I was at drama school as kind of uh sort of training for when you're in an audiobook situation. Um and it's very, very full on, but it's something that I definitely wouldn't not do it, if that
Is
makes
there
sense.
is there any particular book out there that hasn't been done that you can think of that like that really deserves to have like to be read like in that fashion?
To be honest, I don't know. I'm not a super big reader, I will admit. It's something that I'm getting more into now. I've started reading sort of Stephen King novels, which weirdly, if you're not a big reader, is a bit of a weird place to start, because they're all the book I'm currently reading is 1,200 pages, and the one I read before that was 600, and I was like, well, I feel like I should maybe start start with a bit of a smaller one. Um, but yeah, I'm not really massively clued up on books, but I do. Yeah, I think I would love to read, especially if it's anything sort of queer young adult fiction. I think that would be a great place to start. It's like a great thing to do, because I think I would love to do something that's definitely um, something that helps out a community that I care about.
Very true. And for our final question, what is one piece of advice you would offer to a much younger you at the start of your pursuit of acting? And how does all you've learned since then help you to step into yourself now?
I would definitely say that community is key. Like I think the people I've met over the last couple of years, weirdly, I think more so during the lockdowns and the pandemic, because I kind of forced you online and forced you to connect with people, and a lot of them I'd meet sort of months later, and we have these big conversations, and at the end of it, we'd go, "We've never met in person, have we?" But I made a lot of new friends and a lot of people in the industry that I think I would work well with and that are have similar voices to me, isn't similar um, backgrounds to me, and similar ideals and thoughts and feelings as me. Um, because I think when you're in training or when you're in drama school or anything like that, you get this competitive attitude towards the industry. I think it kind of fosters that attitude. But when you get into the industry, it's very, very different. Like it's very, there is obviously a competitive element because you're all vying for the same jobs, but there is also this amazing sense of community that you can feel sometimes. I think it's difficult to feel it all the time, but particularly if you find people who are like you or people who want the same work to be made as you then realize how amazing a community can be within this industry. And that does also mean that you have to have people on it. And this is something I really, really do want to champion throughout my life on every level, having people who are sort of gender diverse, neurodiverse, people with disabilities, people of color. It needs to be on every level because having a community of actors is great. But if you're on set and every single other person is a straight, white, able bodied, neurotypical man,
Yeah.
then you're going to still fall into the same problems
Hmm.
and have the same issues. So having agents who are queer or casting directors who are neurodiverse or writers who are disabled or having people on every level um, just really fosters a much deeper community and a community that can do a lot more, I think. um,
Absolutely.
and and as I said before, I think the biggest thing for me is just knowing what you sell and knowing yourself so that you can sell it well. I think that's my biggest piece of advice, I would say.
Absolutely. And Elliot, where can people follow you? You know, like where's the best place to, we can plug your social media and anything else that you typically like to use.
Yeah, I am pretty much on everything as Elliott Wooster, ELLIOTTWOOSTER. Um, I'm on Twitter or X, and Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere. And you can find Saving Mozart, you can find Fallen, you can find Eight, you can find Guy, which I did, another musical that I did. They're all available on any streaming services. Yeah.
Absolutely, and thank you again for joining me this wonderful day. And I look forward to seeing whatever you're going to do next.
Thank you very much. It's been so lovely speaking to you.
It's been wonderful to speak to you too, Elliot. Farewell and take care.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.